A lot of lost media was broadcast once and then lost to time with next to no visual or audio record, simply existing in the memories of those who were lucky to watch it, unaware that it would never be seen again. Doctor Who is a bit of an outlier in the lost media space, as we have audio recordings of every single missing episode. Why is that? Today we're going to discuss why we have these recordings, who made them, and how they were recorded in the first place. When Doctor Who was first being broadcast, the idea of repeats was rare, almost unheard of. So if dedicated fans wanted to rewatch these television adventures, they couldn't. So many of these fans became amateur sound recordists and started pointing their microphones at their television sets. For Doctor Who, there isn't just one person responsible for recording these episodes. We're going to start with the most prominent recorder, Graham Strong. Graham has the highest quality audio recordings compared to the others. This is because he devised his own ingenious and incredibly dangerous method of recording the audio signal directly to his reel-to-reel recorder via a screened audio cable, therefore not needing to use a handheld microphone. He explains this on a blog post.
Connecting up the recorder in this way potentially made the tape recorder live. I had to ensure that the TV had the neutral side of the main supply connected to the chassis to avoid electric shock and disconnect the earth from the tape recorder. Using this new machine, I was able to record in much better quality than before and with no external noises.
Although Graham had been recording Doctor Who audio since the very first serial, An Unearthly Child, it wasn't until the Daleks' Master Plan Episode 8, Volcano, where he first used this new method. He recorded every episode of Doctor Who up to Episode 5 of The Dominators. There were some episodes he didn't record, such as Episode 11 of the Daleks' Master Plan. He had also wiped and reused many of the pre-Master Plan tapes, since these tapes were quite expensive. He also wiped some stories he just didn't like, such as The Celestial Toymaker. We have to remember, it wasn't Graham's job to preserve these recordings. He was a teenager at the time, and how was he to know that the BBC were going to junk these episodes in the future? In 1994, he approached the BBC to inform them of his recordings and wanted to know if they wanted a copy for their archives. The BBC replied saying that they were only interested in video recordings. I just want to pause for a second. This happened with John Cura's Telesnap collection as well. His wife offered it to the BBC and they turned it down and she junked it. If you have something, or know someone who has something, no matter how insignificant it may seem, preserve it. Many people don't know its worth, including the BBC. I don't believe it's out of malice. It's just down to ignorance. They simply wouldn't be aware of the value of these recordings. But there were people who did know the value. 3 months after this rejection, a sample tape of Graham's recordings were prepared by Stephen Cranford, Richard Delavan, and Paul Lee. They were disappointed that the BBC weren't excited about this find and believed that Graham should be rewarded for his work. The tape landed in the hands of Paul Venezes, who worked at the BBC at the time, and upon hearing the sample tape, contacted Graham to demonstrate his interest in his recordings. On the 6th of April 1994, Graham was given a tour of the BBC studios in London, where he lent his recordings to the BBC for future use. Thanks to this, we now have his famous crystal clear recordings, which have been used in reconstructions, animations, and audio releases. But what about the episodes he didn't record? How do we have copies of those? Well, that's where David Holman comes in. Our next discovery starts in America in July 1995, where Brian Pierce receives an email from Alan Groves. Alan, a British fan, had been to a memorabilia shop where the shop owner claimed to have multiple audio recordings of early Doctor Who. Some exciting finds included the Crusade and Galaxy 4, which at that point weren't floating around the fan circuits. Alan sent Brian a few of these audio recordings and he was shocked by the high quality audio. especially of Marco Polo, which at the time only existed in really poor quality. Brian decided to contact Richard Delavan, who contacted David Holman, the owner of the memorabilia shop. After a few months of persuasion, David was convinced to loan the tapes to the BBC. The handover was held on April 1996, 2 years after Graham's returns. He was also given a tour of the studios at the BBC as a thank you. David's recording method was to hold a microphone up to the TV speaker. Although his method wasn't as technical as Graham's, the recordings are still of great quality. His recordings can sometimes be a bit tinnier than Graham's due to a lack of bass. He recorded all serials from Marco Polo up into the Three Doctors. Thanks to his hard work, combining his audios with Graham's, a complete set of missing episode audios are concluded. Yet, there are still episodes with less than desirable audio quality. David Butler had been recording Doctor Who off-air on audio since he was a teenager. Due to the expense of audio tapes, he generally recorded over his previous recordings. His method was pointing a microphone at his television set. Some of his early recordings contained coughs and sneezes from family members who didn't listen to David's rule of no talking whilst we're recording. One of his highest quality recordings is of Mission to the Unknown, which trumps all of the previous copies made by other recorders. There were many more people who recorded episodes of Doctor Who on audio tape, such as Richard Landon, James Russell, Alan Wilson, David Steed, and Mark Platt, and I'm sure there are so many more that we're not even aware of. Some of these people listed distributed their recordings across fandom for many years, so eager enthusiasts could hear them for the first time. Once Graham Strong and David Holman's recordings were recovered, these became obsolete. Yet these recordings were always handy to help patch any mistakes that existed from the higher quality recordings. There are also a few mysterious recordings of Australian origin, where we do not know the identity of the recorder. The only way we know it was Australian is due to the continuity announcements from Australian television channels. These copies are believed to be the best quality recordings of the invasion and the space pirates. They're not of incredible quality, but they are serviceable. The invasion audio was even used as a base for the DVD animation. It was a long gap until new audio recordings made their way back into the spotlight. In 2018, Kaleidoscope was contacted by Robert Wynne, who was in possession of a few audio reels of Doctor Who stories. They were given to the BBC free of charge for potential future projects. They were called the Randolph Tapes, due to the name Randolph being written on them. Mark Ayres, who works on restoring the audio on many Doctor Who home media releases, has come to the conclusion that they are not as high quality as Graham Strong's recordings, but this find can help clean up some of the dodgy areas of previous recordings. Many other previous recordings hadn't recorded the opening titles, usually to save precious space on these tapes. These recordings retain the opening and closing titles. Now this is important, because some of the previous recordings cut out some moments before the credits began. Now the Randolph tapes fill those gaps. This also means there's also some continuity announcements included in that too. On first examination, Mark believed they could be line recordings like Graham's, or at least very good mic placement. Although these recordings haven't been released to the public, it's good to know that for future releases, patches could be made to all new remasters. And who knows, maybe there are more recordings out there that will trump these ones. Only time will tell. I think an important takeaway from any discussion of lost media is the importance of the community to come together to preserve the television shows and films that mean so much to us. We simply cannot rely on corporations to preserve their own work. For once it stops making money, or costs too much to archive, or they just don't want to pay royalties, it will be junked, or locked away in an aging hard drive or film store. I believe these junkings are rarely out of malice, but due to the bottom line, cold hard cash. We may be talking about a television show from the 1960s right now, but this is still happening to this very day, with shows airing on streaming platforms and then being removed, never to be seen again. Because of people like Graham Strong, David Holman, Richard Landon, and so many others, we now hold on to something tangible from Doctor Who's missing episodes. Audio is half the story, and joining them with John Cura's telesnaps or animation gets us a step closer to watching what has been lost. Sadly, we can't turn back time and stop the episodes from being junked, but we as fans can't help ourselves from stepping up and doing the job ourselves. To all those who have preserved or attempted to bring back life to these missing classics, I thank you. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Nair's YouTube channel. How could I possibly forget that?